You're watching Impact on BBC World News. I'm Yalda Hakim. The Taliban says it will not participate in intra-Afghan talks until roughly 5,000 of its prisoners are released. It follows a landmark pact signed between the United States and the Taliban in Doha on Saturday, which said that up to 5,000 jailed Taliban would be released by March the 10th. It also includes a phased withdrawal of US troops. In return, the hardline Islamist group agreed to hold peace talks with the Afghan government. Pakistan has welcomed the signing of the accord, with the country's Prime Minister calling it a major step towards peace in Afghanistan. Well, let's cross live now to the Pakistani Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, who's in our Islamabad bureau. Mr. Qureshi, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. I mean, there was some sign of hope on Saturday when that signing occurred in Doha, but we're already hitting a stumbling block with the Taliban demanding the release of its prisoners and the Afghan government saying it won't budge.
Well, the road to peace has never been easy. The agreement that you saw, the historic agreement that you saw was signed in Doha wasn't easy. There were hiccups, there were difficulties, but everyone persevered and they achieved success. Now, there are going to be difficulties. Nobody was expecting an easy run, but I'm sure that there will be a way forward. All parties are committed to the agreement and the release of prisoners, and it will be from both sides. It will be a good confidence-building measure. So I am sure the delegation, the 6-member delegation in Doha, already there, and the Taliban will chart a way forward.
Well, the Afghan government's saying we need to see verifiable commitments, not just verbal promises. I mean, should the world trust the Taliban and these pledges that it's making?
I think they should, because they have signed an agreement and they have
They've signed an agreement, but just in the last few minutes, the AFP is reporting that the Taliban says it's ending its partial truce and it will resume Afghan operations. What do you know about that?
Well, I haven't seen that yet, but I am sure that a continued reduction in violence will is required to keep the momentum in the right direction. I would urge all parties to be cool and remain composed and keep their eye on the objective. What is the objective? Objective is peace and stability. Pakistan has facilitated the process. We've taken the first step forward. Now it's up to the Afghans. They have to sit and decide what kind of a country do they want, what kind of a future do they want to plan for themselves. And this can only be done with a political and a far-sighted approach.
And of course, Pakistan also plays a huge role in that, given there have often been accusations of Pakistan harbouring, financing and funding the Taliban, including offering safe havens.
Pakistan has no safe havens. Pakistan has moved in good faith. Pakistan has shown sincerity in this dialogue, and this wouldn't have happened without Pakistan's support.
And the Haqqani network continues to harbour and support Al-Qaeda in Pakistan. So don't you think there's a loophole?
They have clearly said that they will disassociate themselves with not only Al-Qaeda, with all terrorist organizations. They will not allow Afghan soil to be used against US, its allies or any third country.
What about Pakistani soil? Because obviously the Haqqani network functions and operates very openly on Pakistani soil.
We are very clear that our soil will be not used against anyone, and we will not permit any terrorist activity on our soil.
What assurances do you have from the Taliban that, in just over a year, the US forces are looking at exiting should the deal go through? What assurances do you have from the Taliban that they will continue to abide by their counter-terrorism commitments?
Well, if they want peace, if they want prosperity of Afghanistan, then they have to abide by the commitments they have made. It is in their enlightened self-interest to pursue the path that they've agreed upon.
Tell us about the Taliban of today. Have they changed, especially with concerns about their attitude towards women and human rights?
They have said so. If you look at the statement made by
they've said
their
so,
head.
but in the areas in Afghanistan which they control, we're seeing still an oppression of women and things like human rights not being abided by.
You see, you have to understand that the world has changed, Afghanistan has changed, and they've also learned over the years, and they cannot run away from new realities. They will have to accept new realities. There are international expectations, and I'm sure that they are smart enough and shrewd enough to understand that changed environment.
Indeed. Just on the weekend, we saw photographs of former President Hamid Karzai driving through the streets of Kabul with his children. You can see those images there on our screens. There is a sense of renewed hope. Cautious optimism is probably the best way to describe it.
It is indeed, and you saw that in the last few days that the violence that has come down is significant. Afghanistan across the board has never been as peaceful as it is today since the last 4 years.
And just before we move on, sir, Pakistan has always feared that India will dominate Afghanistan somehow and dominate the region. With the Americans exiting, does that threat increase?
Well, how can they dominate Afghanistan? They don't even share a border with Afghanistan. They have nothing in common with Afghanistan, neither cultural affinity nor tribal connections. They don't share the same faith. So, well, they have contributed to their development, and they have a right to have bilateral relations with Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a sovereign country, so is India. But they cannot have the same impact not sharing a border with Afghanistan.
Many would say that's not the point, though, because Pakistan has done more damage to Afghanistan than India ever would.
Well, I think Pakistan has contributed a lot to Afghanistan's socio-economic development. Do not forget that even today, Pakistan is hosting close to 3 million Afghans. We've been providing them scholarships. We've been giving them medical treatment. We've been involved in reconstruction over there. So we've hosted them for 4 decades. When they were insecure in their own country,
and there is
we
hope,
open arms for them and we welcome them.
There is hope that they will be able to return to their country if a peace deal eventuates. Just moving on, sir, the BBC did an interview with Asia Bibi at the weekend. Now, she's the Pakistani Christian woman who spent years on death row, convicted for blasphemy. Now, of course, the reality in Pakistan is that the Ahmadiyas, the Shias and Christian communities continue to be terrorized and accused of blasphemy. What's Pakistan doing about this now?
Well, you saw in Asia Bibi's case that the Supreme Court passed a judgment, and that judgment was honored, and she was released, and she is out of the country. The Pakistan government provided her security while she was in Pakistan. The blasphemy law has been there for years. It was there before Pakistan came into existence. What we have to guard against is the misuse of that law. And the government has taken steps and has undergone procedures to tighten the law so that it's not misused by anyone, against anyone.
Because, of course, this is one case, and because there was a global outcry, there was attention on Asia Bibi, but there are thousands of other similar cases and people lingering in prisons in Pakistan.
Well, you see, I can point out cases that thousands lingering in prisons in India. Look at the Kashmiris who are suffering there. Look at what's happening in Delhi. The last few days, you've seen how discriminatory laws have been enacted. How a Muslim minority in India has been abused in connivance with the Delhi police. So it's all over. It's not Pakistan specific, but Pakistan will treat all minorities. They have fundamental rights, and we respect those rights, and they will be treated equally under the law and the constitution of the country.
Asia Bibi has said that she hopes to return to her country someday. Can you personally guarantee her safety if she was to return?
Well, it's her country, and she can come back if she so chooses to, and we will do everything possible to keep every citizen of Pakistan secure. That's our responsibility.
Mr. Qureshi, before we let you go, of course, the discussions around the globe right now are about the coronavirus. How is Pakistan dealing with this right now?
Well, Pakistan so far has managed well. We have been following WHO guidelines. We have set up quarantine centers. We have given guidance to people. So far, let's keep our fingers crossed, there has been no casualty in Pakistan. It was a difficult decision. There was a lot of pressure on the government to evacuate our students in China, but we took a decision not to do so. We've sealed our borders with Iran and with Afghanistan to protect our people from this global challenge today.
Foreign Minister Qureshi, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you.